Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for joining us. My name is Nathan Carroll. I'm the Executive Director of the Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce. We're pleased to welcome Rachael Roderick, who is the Acting District Director of the SBA New Hampshire office. Our webinar is presented in partnership with the New Hampshire Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, for which I serve as the chair. Our board chair is also joining us for the content today, Wendy Hunt from the Merrimack-Sauhegan Valley Chamber. A few housekeeping items for you. Everyone will remain muted for the duration of Rachael's presentation. After the presentation, we'll answer all of the pre-submitted questions, and we will then move to any additional questions that you may have. At that point, if anyone has additional questions, please use the raise your hand feature that is part of Zoom. Should be under your participant menu at the bottom of the screen. You can go ahead and raise your hand. We'll see that and we'll grab those questions. And at that point, you will be able to unmute yourself to ask that question as well. So please, if you wouldn't mind, mute yourself again after you ask the question, just to avoid any background noise, things like that, as we're recording the session. Otherwise, again, I'd like to welcome Rachael Roderick, with the Acting District Director of the Small Business Administration's New Hampshire office. She's going to fill us in on a number of PPP and EIDL assistance updates, and we'll get to those questions, of course, as well. So, Rachael, thanks for being with us, and we're looking forward to what you have to say.
Great. Thank you for having me, Nathan. And good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate being here and having the opportunity to talk with you today. So it's been a very busy time in SBA. I think we're going on maybe 5 or 6 weeks now since the governor requested disaster status for the state of New Hampshire. And then after that, pretty much the entire country was declared a disaster because of the coronavirus. So that opened up SBA's opportunity to offer disaster assistance to New Hampshire small businesses, as well as some private nonprofit organizations. We started out with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan product, and that went through some bumps in the road. They were not expecting the amount of volume that we received. This is the first time ever in the history of the agency that the entire country was declared a disaster at the same time. So the systems that were in place just simply could not handle that kind of volume. So we went through a couple transitions of application processes, landed on a very streamlined process, I think around the end of March 30th, I believe, which at the same time the CARES Act came into play, where that enabled people to apply for that advance of up to $10,000 on that product. So that application was open for several weeks, and we received literally millions of applications across the country for that program. Currently, that portal is closed for new applications as the agency is working through the volume of the pending applications that are in that system. We are starting to see a lot of businesses in New Hampshire receive those advances, and that's up to $10,000. It's anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 based on the number of employees, is how the disaster office is submitting those out to people. I think we have about 6,000 or so small businesses that have received those so far in New Hampshire. And those just show up in your bank account. As part of that application process, you had to supply your routing number and your bank account information, and those advances are just showing up for people. So if you do have a pending application and you opted into the advance, be on the lookout for that. I think it's labeled EIDL, so that would be the advance portion. And that part of that product is basically a grant. That's a forgiven piece of that product and does not have to be paid back. The remainder of that program offers a low interest rate loan through our disaster office. So a loan officer will be in touch for the balance of that, which would be offered in a loan that's really meant to provide businesses with that emergency working capital they need to get through several months of paying those monthly debt obligations until normal business resumes again. We've had I think we're up to about 300 businesses that have received the loan portion of that. So every day there's a few more added, and we know we'd like that number to be bigger, but they're working through, these applications across the whole country. So, every day we're hearing, seeing the number go up a little bit. So that's encouraging. The Paycheck Protection Program, so that one is not a direct loan. That's a loan that's made through our lenders. So you have to access that program through one of SBA's active lenders, which on our website, we have a link to our New Hampshire participating lenders. And our website is sba.gov/NH. You'll see that list there. You can also find on our website under one of our latest email blasts, we have a list of financial tech companies. So if somebody doesn't have an existing relationship with the lender, the SBA has brought in some financial tech companies that are able to accept applications under that program. Places like PayPal and Cabbage, Intuit, those types of organizations have the temporary authority to accept SBA applications just for the PPP program. So the application process is, there's a 2-page application, which we also have on our website, that you need to provide to a lender with the documentation that basically shows them what your average payroll expenses were before the virus occurred. So most people are using 2019 as a base for that to figure out what their average payroll was. You'll get that monthly amount and you times it by 2.5, which gives the business a loan that would cover 8 weeks of payroll and related expenses, along with a 25% of that loan can be used for utilities, mortgage, interest, or rent. At the end of the 8 weeks, you would supply the documentation back to the lender that shows you used the loan for those purposes. And as long as you do that and maintain the head count and the salary pretty much at those levels, then the loan would be 100% forgiven at the end of that 8 weeks. So we're in our second round of funding for that. The first round of funding went very quickly. We had 14 days from April 3rd to the 17th, where lenders were, feverishly getting those loan applications in. I think we ended up with 1.6 million across the country. The funding at that point was about 349,000 or so. 49 billion, sorry. In New Hampshire, we ended up with 11,500 of these loans approved for $2 billion. And just to put that in perspective, that's about 15 years of our normal lending that we do in New Hampshire through the SBA traditional program. So tremendous amount of loans that were done during that short period of time with a brand new program. Basically, they rolled the program out, and within days, the SBA opened it up and lenders were getting loan approvals in that program. So there's been a little frustration on that part on the lenders because our guidance has been trickling out a little bit at a time because it is a brand new program. And, so they've had to have some patience with SBA. I know businesses have had to have a lot of patience with SBA because this is just a brand new program and they were trying to get assistance out as quick as possible. So the guidance has been coming out slowly but surely, but we're still actually waiting for additional guidance on the forgiveness piece of it. So hopefully soon. Some other interesting things to note on the first round was that we had 210 different lenders providing loans in New Hampshire, which is well over what we normally see. We normally see about 70 or so lenders that usually participate in New Hampshire. So that number was way up. And then the loan size for those was at $173,000. And those loans can go up to 10 million. So our average loan size was very low, which means we were getting to those small businesses that needed that help with the payroll assistance. So, so far we don't have numbers for round 2, which just started Monday at 10:30. It was like everyone was sitting by their keyboards at Monday at 10:30 if you were a lender and you're getting ready to input all your loans. As of yesterday around 5 o'clock, I think the agency was at about 90 billion in appropriate funds that have been set aside for that loan for the second round, and about a million applications. So tremendous volume and tremendous interest for this program. So we're encouraging anybody that does not have an application in place to act immediately, because those funds are going to be gone very, very quickly. So you need to get that documentation and that application to a lender as soon as possible, to be able to get in line and have a chance of getting that loan approved before the money runs out. I know we have a lot of questions on that, but before I just want to give a couple more things that SBA is doing for the debt relief or disaster relief. We have a SBA Express Bridge Loan product available that's available to our Express lenders. So you would go to our website again, and under from our office, you can see a list of our lenders, and we have boxes that are checked off if they're an Express lender. This loan is basically meant for somebody that has a disaster, an offer from the disaster office for the loan, but they want to get some money quickly that can be paid off. So it's kind of like a gap loan that allows the lender to provide up to $25,000, and then that loan would be paid off once you get the disaster loan in place. So it's just another product that's meant to try to get funds to the business quicker than the SBA disaster office can get them to you. And then we have our debt relief program, which is nothing really that anybody has to apply for. It's just a relief to any of our existing borrowers through any of our programs. If you have one of our regular guarantee loans through one of our lenders, or one of our certified development companies, or one of our intermediaries that does our microloan program, SBA is paying that principal and interest payment on your behalf to the lender for the next 6 months. So those aren't deferred payments, those are forgiven payments. So you would not be required to make any payments over that 6 months, and you would not be required to make up those payments after the 6 months. So we have that, as well as any new loans that are made between now and September 27th, or I shouldn't say made, that are just fully dispersed by September 27th. So anything new that doesn't fit into one of the disaster programs, those loans will also come with that 6 months of forgiven payments as well. So some people may want to consider, a working capital loan through one of our express lenders or something like that to help pay some of those bills. And those 6 months would be forgiven, those first 6 months. The lender would also be able to ask for deferment payments beyond that. So that can offer some relief for businesses that are looking for that weren't able to get into the disaster loan program directly. Let's see, did I miss anything? I think that pretty much sums up what we have going on. I mean, we have our partners that I do want to mention as well. We have the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center. We have our SCORE mentors. We have our Center for Women in Enterprise, which is our Women's Business Center. All of our partners we're keeping them up to speed on what we have going on. They're assisting businesses about evaluating which programs might be beneficial to them and helping with documentation questions and how to best utilize the funds and make sure you get the most forgiveness on the PPP loan and that type of thing. So if you don't already have a relationship with one of our mentors, we would highly recommend that you do. The other thing that I'll tell people too is the best way to stay informed about any changes that we have going on, and where we go to first is we send out email updates as soon as we have information that we can share with the public. So if you go to our website, and I'll mention it again, it's sba.gov with the /NH. At the bottom right, you can click on email updates and put your email address in there. And we're sending a couple out a week at least, or every other day or so, with any changes, more guidance that's available, what our partners are doing for training and all that kind of stuff. So that's the best way to stay up to speed on the most current information coming out of the SBA locally and nationally. That's all I have. I can answer.
Awesome, Rachel.
Rick?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So I think we probably got into a few of the questions a little bit, but we'll start right off with those. I may paraphrase, so forgive me if it is what it is. But this one may need some qualification. But if we lay someone off, how does it affect the loan forgiveness under PPP? And I don't know if that's somebody who would be wanting to apply or who had already applied, but maybe you could speak to both sides.
So the whole idea of the Paycheck Protection Program is to get back to those pre-disaster payroll levels. So, if you do have a PPP loan, you probably wouldn't want to lay anyone off because you want to get the maximum benefit of that loan. You want to get to that historical monthly level that you have there because that's what your loan is based on. And that would give you the maximum amount to use for those other expenses. If you get the payroll at least at 75%, you have those other expenses that can be handled by that other 25% of the loan. If you haven't applied yet, and we have people that have got people on unemployment now, ideally, as soon as the loan is approved, the lender has 10 days to disperse the loan to you, to close and disperse the loan to you. And at that disbursement, that's when your 8-week clock starts ticking. So that would be when you would want to try to get up to full payroll levels as quick as possible to that date. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but.
I think it does pretty comprehensively. You mentioned to me early on that there was not a lot of information with regard to the forgiveness piece and maybe details about that, but we had a few questions. So with related to forgiveness, one was when the SBA be releasing details on forgiveness and restoring employees. And do you see any extension of the PPP hiring deadline or the 8-week after approval?
We did have guidance that came out yesterday or so. I think it was yesterday or the day before that pretty much doubled down on the 8 weeks being at loan disbursement. So I don't think that's going to change at all. They want these loans dispersed quickly within that 10 days, and they want the lenders reporting on it to SBA within 20 days. So they don't want that being dragged out to get that 8 weeks to be farther along down the line. They made that pretty clear in the most recent guidance that they submitted to us. So I don't think that's going to change. As far as the forgiveness, there is something in the rules that say you have to maintain the full-time equivalents within 25% and also the salary of individuals within 25%. Otherwise, your loan forgiveness may be reduced. But it looks like there's a caveat that as long as those people are rehired by June 30th, that gives you a pass if you don't meet that 25%, if you don't stay within that 75%. So we're still waiting on additional guidance, but I think if you do bring people back by June 30th, that you wouldn't get a reduction in your forgiveness. You will still only be eligible for forgiveness on what your actual expenses are, though. So, so it benefits you to try to get your levels back up to that historical payroll, average payroll monthly amount.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will the SBA provide an online means to report the potentially forgivable expenses after the 8 weeks have lapsed, or are they leaving that up to the lender on how to determine?
Yep, so I think the documentation you would be providing would be to your lender. From one of the frequently asked questions that the Treasury posted yesterday, it looks like the SBA is only going to be looking at loans over $2 million directly. So other than that, I think the documentation would be provided to the lender, and then the lender would make the certification to SBA.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How do I find out if an existing application has been accepted? This didn't denote PPP or EIDL. I would imagine, though, the PPP is obviously through a lender, and then EIDL, perhaps you could speak to that.
Yep. So for EIDL, if somebody has an application number that begins with a 3, that means you did that streamlined version that was the latest version that came out, I think, March 30th. If you have that application that begins with a 3, or if you've had the advance show up in your bank account, that means that you are in queue and you just basically have to be patient and wait for the disaster office to get in touch with you for the additional loan piece. They do have an 800 number that you can call to check the status of those. We're not able to check statuses here locally. We just don't have access to their system. But if you call 1-800-659-2955, that is the disaster center, and they can try to help you get a status there for that. But basically, if you have that number 3, then you are pretty much in line on getting assistance from the disaster office, and a loan officer should be contacting you with that piece of it.
Great. Any idea, Rachel, in terms of, say, an average turnaround time for, once from when you apply for the advance even to when you are getting that advance?
Yeah. There was a long wait in the beginning, I know, but I think people that applied towards the end before they shut it off a week or so ago, people were getting them quick. I mean, I heard of one person getting it within 3 days, and I'm like, oh, that seems like a unicorn, because I have not seen that a lot at all. But I have heard at least of one person that got it in the 3 days that SBA thought they were going to try to do in their goal. So it's hard to say. I think we are starting to get them on a regular basis, and people are starting to receive those. So I don't know a time frame, to be honest. And the loan piece is even a little bit more difficult. I think during normal times, they're looking at 3 weeks or so, but these aren't normal times, so it's hard to say. They tell us they're working at them as quickly as they can, and in the order they were received. That's the line we're getting from.
How very diplomatic of them, huh?
Yes.
Let's see. I'm going to just look through. I think we answered a couple with regard to EIDL, that status, and will EIDL be accepting new applications? You may have touched on that earlier, but if you could again.
As of right now, they are not accepting new applications. I don't know what the future holds for them. I know we got additional funding as part of the last package that Congress has passed, and they're using that money to try to go through the backlog of existing applications for right now. I would imagine that if they clean that up and there's funding left over, then they will start opening it up again. But I think to be fair, for the people that applied already, I think they're going to be using that funding to process the ones that they are already in queue.
Got it. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can sort through this one a little bit. This is related to somebody who received their loan funds in their account on April 29th. They're needing to hire the people back immediately, but then maybe had a question. Let's see. When I pay them next Monday, which I assume is next week, for the previous week, how does their pay come out of PPP? Does their pay come out of PPP or unemployment? Or is that a split week, or do I ask my bank? And perhaps that's a little bit of all that.
Yeah. So we're still waiting on guidance for these kinds of questions, but my understanding of how it's going to work is that you are going to have to provide documentation about the 8 weeks from when the loan is dispersed, 8 weeks out. So that would be when they're actually working during that time frame. So I know pay periods are weird, and they start before and after. People get paid for a time period they worked previously and that type of thing. So you may have to split pay periods to provide that documentation, but it should be the weeks that started on your loan disbursement of those work weeks. And even if you paid them beyond the 8 weeks to cover that 8 weeks, does that make sense? It's a little confusing for people.
Yes.
They definitely cannot collect their full unemployment and be part of PPP at the same time. So they have to be on your payroll or have that week of work. That's what you're going to document to the lender.
Right, and of course, with relation to the unemployment, they're going to have to report all their earnings as they're told anyway, which is when they earn them, not when they are paid, which is another webinar from yesterday.
Yes.
But what we could certainly do if folks had additional questions is connect them with the New Hampshire Employment Security if they don't have a contact there. Let me check on other questions here. I was a self-employed bookkeeper on January 2nd, 2020. I got my real estate agent license and changed careers. What money or what dollar amount should I use for my loan?
Yeah, I was looking at that question, and maybe when we open it up, we can get more information there. But from what I gather from that, we're talking about a sole proprietor. And the guidance on the sole proprietors was, that came out, it's pretty much said that you have to go by the 2019 Schedule C form. So you have to look at where you're reporting your business revenues and income and all that on your Schedule C, and you would get your net income off of that. And that would be what you would have to base your PPP loan on. So it's like 8 weeks of your net income. So you'd have to do the calculation for that. It sounds like this person is going to have 2020 net income, and that the rule that came out said that we're going to be getting additional guidance on that, which isn't very helpful because we don't have it yet, and the money's going to be going very quickly. So it's going to be tough, I think, if you are a sole proprietor without a payroll and you're talking about 2020 income, because I don't know how they're going to base the loan amount for that. So maybe we can get more information when we open that up and see if we can.
Yeah, perhaps we can. Perhaps we can. Yeah. Our last one was a little bit more of a unemployment or a compensation question, not necessarily related to a loan, but we'll see if we can tackle it. Can we give our employees hazard pay or supplements to compete against unemployment and the $600 extra per week, meaning that some folks are indeed making more on unemployment because of the $600 federal unemployment piece. And as far as I know, Rachel, the employers that are bringing folks back can absolutely offer hazard pay. There's nothing against that. And of course, if they're if they're just coming back to be regular, full-time or their regular hours, they can certainly add additional pay to that.
Yep. I think that's correct. I saw a question that was posed to our processing center that didn't like the whole tagging it as hazard pay or bonus or whatever, but I think you can definitely justify a higher rate of pay. You would just want to document that you're just their regular pay is you're paying them at a higher rate because of the situation that we have in play right now. I think that would be fine.
Oops, sorry, I was muted there. That was the extent of the pre-submitted questions I had. And if folks had joined us later, what I had mentioned was that if we could please use the hand raise feature here in Zoom under your participant menu at the bottom. If you want to raise your hand, if you do have a question, you are able at this point to unmute yourself. I will take a look at the chat to see if there's been some questions submitted to me, but do we have questions in the meantime?
I have a question.
Go ahead with your question.
Is it you talking to me?
Yes. Yeah. Zoom Math
okay,
2,
so,
it looks like the username is. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, I really appreciate all your time and everything that you're spending trying to help us out with this. I have a resort that was just opened up in the end of 2019. So we really didn't have proper payroll or anything like that. I'm also a sole proprietor, and I heard that comment, and I spoke to my accountant who would give me a problem with me filing for the PPP. I did hear you mention something about the express 25,000 loan thing. I just want to know if that will be applicable to me if I don't have any payroll, and what kind of documentation I would need, and if there's anything else that we could try to apply for to help me with my results. Right now it's completely closed and it's really tough.
So if you were operational in 2019, then you probably still could apply for the PPP loan. If you want to email our office, we can send you kind of the calculation that goes over for sole proprietors as a document that provides some guidance on that. And you can email, it's New Hampshire spelled out _DO@sba.gov. We can try to sort that out for you. As far as the bridge loan question, basically that's eligible for somebody who has an application already pending with the disaster office. So I'm not sure if you applied for the EIDL loan. If you did,
I got the first 10. I applied for I got that.
Okay, so you are in the thing there. So you could go to one of our express lenders. Probably not this week because they're all very occupied with putting in the PPP applications. But when that money runs out, they'll have a breather to look at other stuff. You could possibly talk to one of those express lenders and see if they could offer you that bridge loan. And basically that's up to $25,000 that would be paid off with the economic injury loan when you receive that. The other option too is to ask them about just our regular 7A program, potentially maybe a term loan for working capital under that, and that would be eligible for that 6 months of forgiveness payments on those as well.
Okay, so that's not dependent on the express loan, is not dependent on the payroll, right?
No, it's not. No.
Okay.
The express bridge loan is basically just to give you some financing while you wait for the economic injury loan. And the economic injury loan is not payroll based. It's not the same thing as that paycheck loan. That one is based on just operating expenses. Whatever monthly obligations you have is eligible to be, your working capital needs on a monthly basis, projected out so many months. That's how they determine that loan amount.
Right. Now the reason why I didn't have payroll in the beginning, because I outsourced the cleaning crews and everything, and I gave them 1099.
Mm-hmm.
Could I use 1099? The bank would tell me I cannot use 1099.
No.
So, and then that means I can't use my self salary either, because the LLC, and I'm not putting it on the 940.
You can still use your own. You do a K1 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, you can. There is a formula for that. So email our office and we will, you can do that. Basically, you would look at your self-employment income for 2019, and that's based off of that.
And now also one more question. I appreciate that. Is this PPP loan on top of the 10,000, or it's going to be deducting the $10,000 from it? In other words, let's say my whole total will be anyway $10,000. Is it going to be on top of that, or are they going to deduct it from the first 10,000 that I already received?
So it's interesting because you said you don't have employees, or?
I have employees, but I couldn't put them. I have them now from January 1st. I put them on a regular salary, but from 2019 I was giving them 1099. Outsourcing. I didn't.
Okay, so if you have employees in 2020 from January, you could probably provide the bank with January and February to come up with your average payroll cost and do your PPP with that.
The bank wanted to 2019 specifically.
Okay.
Unless I'm making a mistake.
We'll have to look into that. So
yeah, let's
maybe reach out to me.
Let's circle back on it, and yes, I can certainly connect you and Rachel or that office, and we can get the more answers for you and get it taken care of. But want to grab a couple other questions as well that have come in the chat. With regard to maintaining headcount, Rachel, how is that calculated? Is it an average over a time frame?
Yep, I think what they're going to use, and again, we're waiting for the final forgiveness information to come out, but from what I was reading, they're going to look at your average headcount over the first quarter of 2020, and then you're going to compare that number to the where you are at the end of the 8 weeks. And as long as it doesn't go down by more than 25%, then there would not be a deduction in forgiveness. And that's the same for the salaries. They would look at the salaries for individuals quarter one and compare that to the end 8 weeks.
Got it. Okay. Let me just sort through one here very quickly. With unemployment and folks making the extra 600, they're obviously finding it difficult for folks to take advantage of the PPP. I assume that means that they are having trouble bringing folks back. In this instance, can they still use some of the funds to pay the business mortgage, interest, and utilities?
They have to maintain that 75-25 ratio. So if they have some payroll, then that would be they'd have to do the base of everything they paid and keep those other expenses under 25% of whatever they spent.
Got it. And almost to piggyback on that, can 100% of the PPP be used for payroll?
Yes. Except with the exception of sole proprietors, they're limited because you're replacing your own salary. You're limited to the 8 weeks of your net income, but employers can do more than, can do 100% for payroll.
Got it. Let's see, we've got, this question is, I'm a bookkeeper and have a client who filed for the EIDL as self-employed with 2 partners and got the EIDL advance for $2,000. They're worried that they will not qualify to receive it.
They already got it?
Let me go back to the question.
Okay.
It does say they got the EIDL advance for $2,000 and they're worried that they're not qualified to receive it. So I would assume that if they received it, they're qualified for that.
Yes. If they got it, they got it.
That's it. Don't question it, right?
Yeah. They even said if people aren't eligible and they got the advance, that they got the advance. So yeah.
Sure. And then this one is actually with regard to work share and PPP. Is there any guidance on using the work share program to bring employees back, for example, at 50%? Can we use PPP for 50%? And they're working for the 50% they're working? Would that be considered bringing the employees back to full-time equivalence?
That's a pending question that we're waiting for additional guidance on whether those people, because they're collecting unemployment, whether they'll be part of the whole headcount and the eligible funds for PPP. Definitely, if they do allow it, my guess would be that unless you would only be paying them for half time, you're only going to be able to count them as a part-time person. You're not going to be able to count them for full-time, if you can count them at all. And I wish I had clear guidance on that, because we have some businesses that are hesitant to use the work share program because they want to, they want to use both the PPP and the work share, and we're waiting on guidance for that to come out.
Let me see if we've got other questions here. Were there folks, and I'm recognizing there's a number of folks on that dialed in by phone that probably don't have the hand raise feature or the chat. Are there folks on the phone who may have had a question? And you can feel free to unmute and pose your question. Hopefully we won't step too much on top of each other.
Do they have to press star 6 to unmute themselves, or that's how?
That's a good question. That I don't know. It just depends on how they've done it. But let's see. Actually, one that just came in that says, "Who can I speak with to ask about the $10,000 advance that I applied for over 4 weeks ago?" They may have come in late to the conversation, but I know that you kind of touched on the time frame in which those advances were being processed. If you don't mind, one more time.
Yep. So we're seeing the advances show up every day. We're hearing from people that they are getting them now, and there was several weeks when we weren't hearing anyone was getting them. So I would think if you haven't received it yet, that you should be receiving it shortly. And just so you know, the grant is up to $10,000. So we've had a lot of questions on that. So unless you have 10 or more employees, you probably would not be receiving the full $10,000. It's $1,000 per employee is how our understanding is how they're getting it out there. So yeah, you guys are doing, by the way, a fantastic job managing all of this. I know that you're in a way sort of the messenger, and in the New Hampshire office, and you're doing an amazing job of sharing information. I saw in an email, actually, because I'm on your list today, that it sounds like the daily or recurring webinars or phone-ins are coming back again. Is that correct? Yes, we started them back again on Monday, once we got funding again. So
excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any more questions? I guess you did a really good job in that case, Rachel.
You went easy on me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, so it looks like
my hand raised. Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, sure. Yep.
Okay, so I just sold my restaurant last year. So this year we opened a food truck, my husband and I. So now we don't have employees. We applied for the, which my accountant said that we qualified, but now you're saying we only get $1,000 per employee. If we don't have employees, does that mean I do not qualify?
You applied for the EIDL? You were breaking up a little bit, I'm sorry.
Yes, I applied for the EIDL, but we have no employees.
Yeah.
Are you saying that we don't qualify?
For people that have no employees, you would be considered as a one employee. So you would qualify for the $1,000 part of that doesn't have to be repaid. And then the rest of it would be offered in a loan later on.
Okay, so if my husband and I are partners, would that be $1,000 each?
It depends on how you filled out the application. Did you put employees on your application?
No.
Okay. So they're probably going to go by your application, and if it says 0 employees, you would get $1,000. And then when the loan officer calls you, you could try to talk with them at that point and see if you can say it should have been 2 and see what happens from there.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. Any other final questions? Okay. Someone asked in the chat how they can get on your email list, Rachel, and I know you said it was sba.gov/NH, and that you can sign up right there on the site. Correct?
Right at the bottom right-hand side. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I'll go one more round. Any more questions? It's great. I'm happy to take them. All right, crickets is a good thing sometimes. Again, Rachel, thank you, and thanks for spending the time with us. Just as a note for everyone that's listening in, today's webinar will be available tomorrow as a recording. We'll place it on our COVID-19 resource page on our website, and it'll also be linked through our newsletter, which will go out probably about midday tomorrow, our Friday resource newsletter. If you do have additional questions, you can certainly reach out to the Chamber, reach out to Rachel if needed. I'm happy to get information to her or questions to her if it's just easier. You can certainly call the Chamber or send us an email, info@littletonAreaChamber.com. And again, I say thank you for joining us. If there are additional resources that you need, questions that you have, or if anyone in your network has needs or with regard to resources, questions, please send them our way. We're happy to help everyone and anyone at this point. We've flung our figurative doors open with regard to member and non-member, and are sharing as much information with the full community and our full lists and social media as we can, because that's what we should be doing at this point. So we're happy to help. Again, thank you, Rachel. I know you guys have your hands full, so thanks for taking the time today. And also, don't forget to utilize some of those partners that Rachel spoke about, the Small Business Development Center, Center for Women in Enterprise, and SCORE. All of those services, as far as I know, Rachel, are free to individuals and business owners. If you're starting a business, if you're in the thick of it, you can reach out to those organizations and have some free counseling and consultation with regard to small business. So an amazing, amazing resource that's available to everyone in the state of New Hampshire. So, all right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And when we do have additional guidance on forgiveness, maybe we can do one of these again and we can answer some of those pending questions. I'm
glad you said that.
I just wanted to let people know that Miguel Morales from my staff is also here, and he does our economic outreach, you know, for the county up there. So definitely reach out to Miguel or myself if we can be of any assistance. And our partners are doing a lot of virtual training specific to these kinds of topics. So you'll find out that on our email blast, or you'll see links to find them directly from our website. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Great. Stay well, everyone. Thanks very much. Bye now.